Hi, welcome to the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy, and comment your thoughts and opinions on the stories. Let's get started. Am I the antagonist for telling my brother-in-law's girlfriend she's boring because all she talks about is her job? My 34F brother-in-law's GFA 32F recently got a new job. She got her master's in 2020 and never stops talking about it. My husband, 36, Jack, has noticed the same thing, and he has said his brother Luke, 32, talks about it too. It gets on our nerves, but we tolerate it because we know how excited Faye is about her degree and now this new job, which she also won't stop talking about because, as she says, she wouldn't have gotten it if she didn't pursue her master's, since it's a requirement. We had them over for dinner last night with my parents and my film mother-in-law. Once again, Faye brings up her new job. It doesn't start for another couple of weeks. She works in education, so her contracts are based on the school calendar, and she was talking about all the things she gets to do now that she really wanted to do. She mentioned it being a life goal. I asked her what was next. She asked what I meant. I asked her about things like kids or marriage, since they'd been together for 3 years now. She said she didn't want to rush into marriage or kids until she had her goals in order, but marriage was something she and Luke had been seriously discussing. I asked when she'd have time for kids marriage with her career goals. She said she'd make time. I said kids are a lot of work, SAHM. I told her that when I was pregnant, it wasn't feasible financially or logically to continue working as an SDNA, so I quit at 26. Faye said that she doesn't want kids she can provide for, and she likes relying on herself because so many SAHMs are financially trapped when they stop working and can't leave if the marriage falls apart for whatever reason. I'll be honest, I was offended by that. I told her not all of us are trapped. She agreed but said you never know and should depend on yourself, even in marriage. Luke was nodding and agreeing. I said, it would also give you more to talk about other than your job. Faye asked if I had a problem with her talking about her job. I said no, but honestly, it's the only thing she seems to have that's mildly interesting. Everyone else talks about kids, home life, vacations, family, hobbies, but all you talk about is your degree, education, and this new job of yours. And I told her it was kinda boring. Faye said, then I won't bore you any further, and ask my in-laws how installing wood floors was going. We all moved on past the conversation until later that night. After Luke and Faye left, my mother-in-law told me I was rude. I told her I was telling the truth because we are all tired of hearing about it. Jack agreed, but mother-in-law said while that was true, it's still an accomplishment no one, look me up and down, in this family has done yet, and I seemed jealous. I said I wasn't jealous, but offended by some things she said. Mother-in-law told me I was only offended because Faye was right. Jack said she was right, but it was obvious she was directing those comments at me in a judgmental way. And my parents agree with me. Am I the antagonist? Never inquire about a woman's impending parenthood. Being a woman for some people doesn't necessarily entail being a mother, and that's absolutely fine. You probably talk about your children because, like her, you are proud of their education. Comment by team member Parker. Now for the top comments. AITA and Faye handled that appropriately by dismissing you. I think I love her. Exactly, and the in-laws sat and watched and judged Op to be tar. I'm sure they all agree that Op is jealous and thinks she's petty too. Hopefully she apologizes in front of the same group she just embarrassed herself in front of. Self-reflection is an important skill, Op. AITA, you started harassing her about children and marriage because you're jealous. All I see is when are you going to have kids? Because that's all I have to talk about. And you'll have to quit your job because it's 1930 and women can't work and raise children at the same time. Everyone else talks about kids, home life, vacations, family, hobbies. Faye, it is just too rich that your first 4 examples of different topics involve your children. Perhaps you should reflect on how much you talk about your job as a SAHM. Sounds like it's about 80% of your conversations. You're the a-hole. Honestly, are kids, home life, and family not all the exact same thing? and unless they're hella wealthy, vacations are maybe a few times a year thing. It sounds to me like Op might be the boring one to talk to here. Am I the antagonist for filing a report against my late husband's colleague and getting him fired? My husband, 33, passed away 3 weeks ago. He used to work for this company for 4 years. He'd known lots of people and made many friends. For days I kept getting texts from his colleague Ted. I don't know him personally. I had no idea how he even got my number. When he first texted me, I texted, "Where did you get my number?" And he replied saying he got it from my husband. At first I felt annoyed, but then I started getting flirty texts from him. They started getting more and more inappropriate. I warned him to stop, but he sent me a deep pic one night at 3 AM and asked if I needed company, since he knew I was lonely. I was appalled and enraged. I couldn't even sleep at night. I waited till the early morning to go to the company, straight to his boss, and filed a report against. After explaining in details about his behavior, he ended up getting fired because the other colleagues said he did me and my husband wrong and disrespected his memory. He started arguing about how low what I did was coming to his work in hopes of ruining his livelihood. He kept saying it was between him and I, and his workplace had nothing to do with it, but I told him I've known only as my husband's colleague and he was his colleague. He and a friend of his said that I was aiming to get him fired and that he did nothing wrong, and I cold talked it out with him instead. My mom called him a pose for doing this to my husband and me, but also said that he had a point in that I shouldn't come after his livelihood since the guy has a kid to provide for. I felt bad about the whole thing, and now I feel like I made things worse and acted out of emotions. He learned the truth through getting dirty. He treated you poorly and bullied you. This is unquestionably a work issue because you are the late colleague's widow. You made the proper choice without a doubt. A little price to pay for learning this lesson is being fired. Comment by team member Shannon. Now for the top comments. NTA. He wasn't worried about his children's livelihood when he was sexually harassing his coworker's widow. I have no idea where he was even coming from sending a dick pic to a grieving widow of 3 weeks. WTFFF. He got your phone number at work. He knew you were a widow because of work. He would never have targeted you if he hadn't known your husband and knew he died. So his behavior had everything to do with work. And doing this to his co-worker's widow? Of course his employer was horrified. The guy had it coming. Preying on someone's grief is so low. Not the a-hole. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Exactly. Plus she's a widow of 3 weeks. I might understand reaching out after 6 months and building a friendship, but 3 weeks and DCK pics. That man deserved the consequences for his horrible actions. Op, I'm so sorry for your loss and that you were harassed by this man. Please consider filing a police report if he continues. This is not okay behavior. Obviously not the a-hole. Gotta love your mom's comment. Oh no, his actions had a negative effect on his life. Perish the thought. NTA. Your husband hasn't even been gone that long and this guy used his work to get your number and try to work his way in. He crossed several lines and got the consequences of his actions. NTA. Take your husband out of the equation. This grown-ass man sent you an unsolicited dick pic in the middle of the night after getting your phone number from a coworker. That's inappropriate. Am I the antagonist for calling my daughter worthless and prioritizing my wife over her? My 47 male wife, 47F, and I have 3 kids, a 27F, a 20F and a 16 meters. Our oldest one used to be the best kid. At 17 she met a longtime ex. She got married to him 4 years ago, but they got divorced after 6 months BC. She caught him cheating. We took her in. Even paid for her therapy 4 years after that. She has a very good stable job and she makes more than what I and her mom make. We don't expect her to pay rent, but she doesn't contribute at all in our household. She has 2 dogs and she barely even pets them or acknowledges them, and the dogs have a bigger bond with my wife and I and our 2 younger kids than their actual owner. She recently stopped paying her own bills because money is tight, but she'd always go out to expensive clubs, spas, trips, resorts etc. while neglecting even her own personal bills and responsibilities. For the past 4 years she only gets involved with married men because she enjoys the fact that she gets picked over the married women and she's of the mindset if they were good wives they'd be able to keep a man. He chose me for a reason over his wife. Knowing she's troubled, I've always tried to be a good father to her and offer her a good support system. But my wife got done so quickly with our daughter's attitude because her behavior was also affecting our younger kids. I tried to keep a balance, and while doing that my daughter took advantage of the support I offered her to draw a conflict between my wife and I. In our 30 years of relationship my wife and I never had major arguments and fights, but because of our daughter those arguments happen every other day. As I tried to be a good father to her I forgot how to be a good husband to my wife and a good father to my 2 younger kids. I again tried to find a balance and have a talk with my oldest about how I don't want to be taking sides anymore. She can live her life how she wants, but she should stop trying to cause conflict with me and her mom. She took that personally and started verbally insulting me and said I'm a spineless CNT and how I'm giving up on her and I'm showing favoritism to her siblings. And while she can get past that, she can't get over how I'm willing to put my wife's feelings above my own daughter. She called my wife, her own mom, a joke of a woman who's worthless and she'll enjoy the moment I decide to cheat on her. I told her she's worthless and from now on she gets no sympathy from me. I gave her 1 week to pack her things and leave the house since her presence is toxic to both my wife and her siblings, and I also told her the dogs will stay with us since she can't even feed her own pets properly as a grown-ass adult. I've tried to help her for many years, even paying money I barely have so she can attend therapy, but I told her unless she's willing to help herself we can't do much and she's on her own now. Am I the antagonist for being so harsh to her? She must be expelled because she deserves it. For someone like her, there is no need for sympathy. She shouldn't be around your smaller children in case they pick up bad behavior. She must leave if she is harming your relationships with your family and you. Correction, I'd be concerned about potential drug abuse. Comment by team member Charlie. Now for the top comments. NTA, damn, that was hard to read. She's still hurt by what happened and she's trying to be the other woman because she wasn't chosen in her marriage. She will enjoy when you decide to cheat on your wife because she thinks this is normal and expected behavior. Not so sure therapy is working and her problem is becoming yours. You made the right decision. Also, as a therapist, I'm super sus that she was even attending therapy, and if she was, how she managed to get the literal exact opposite message that was hoped for. I feel like there's got to be more going on, because while getting cheated on is awful, that seems like an extreme reaction in just about every way. It's one thing to support your daughter and another to enable her. You've been enabling her. She's had a good job for how long? And she's continued to live at home with no financial responsibilities? Yeah. No, that isn't being a good father. Is it helpful to tell her that she's worthless? No. And I know that was a heat of the moment response, but yeah, it was crappy. That said, yeah, she needs out of the house. She needs to see that she can support herself, and if she fails, that she can pick herself up. That isn't something that you can do for her. And in the meantime, you need to focus on your wife and other kids, cause it sounds like it's been the older daughter show in your house for quite a while. NTA, for finally stopping the enablement. Close bracket. Needs to be further up. I couldn't quite come up with a work, but enabler is the one. NTA, your daughter has taken full and utter advantage of you and your wife, and you have allowed her to live and behave like a spoiled child. You should have put her out and put a stop to her behavior long ago. She needs to grow up and experience life on her own. Her lifestyle will catch up with her, and when the debt collectors come knocking at her door, she will have to take responsibility for her own actions. As for her going out with married men, she seems to have forgotten what it feels like to be cheated on, and is taking revenge for her pain by doing the same to other women. Once again, she is grown adult and this too will catch up with her. I hope that you can mend the relationship you have with your wife and other daughters, as you have put your eldest daughter's needs and wants above them for a long time. Am I the antagonist for my response when my cousin's boyfriend called me Barren? Okay, so bit of backstory. DP, M36, and I, F33, have been properly trying for a baby for 2 years now. Nothing is happening. We're being told to stay optimistic and not lose hope, but quite frankly I'm really starting to. It's hard because of the emotional and physical toll it has taken on me already, not to mention how friends and family feel about this. It's frustrating seeing them disappointed like that. My cousin met her boyfriend Jerry months ago. She wanted me to meet him at my parents' house. I went there and met him, and we talked about a lot of stuff. He asked many questions which didn't really bother me till he started asking about my husband and any kids we didn't have. When I told him we've been trying for 2 years but got no luck, Mom said that I had medical issues. He looked at me, nodded and loudly said also in other words she's barren. I was stunned. I almost dropped my fork from the shock. The room went quiet and I saw how Mom was looking at me with pity. My cousin and her mom acted nonchalant thinking I'd let it go, but I cleared my throat and told him no. But my husband's juice tastes so good I keep swallowing it instead. Gosh, I hate thinking about all those children we could have had. It's a shame, but so worth it honestly. Jerry looked at me eyes wide open and my cousin quickly tried to change the subject, but Jerry excused himself to the bathroom. That's when my aunt and cousin unloaded on me, calling me crazy to say such an inappropriate thing in front of a guest I met for the first time. I told them he started asking personal questions then called me barren, which I found cruel. But my aunt said that I took it too far by responding so shamelessly and having an attitude about it. My mom watched, but dad got involved, and I had to get up and leave. My cousin and her mom are still livid as mom said, and I was told to at least apologize for what I said as it was inappropriate and made Jerry very uncomfortable and probably caught him off guard and gave him the impression that I'm rude and snarky. Am I the antagonist? How in the world does he know someone isn't extremely fertile? There's a chance your husband's sperm count is low. One of you could need to travel much for work. He needs to apologize for his sexist and impolite remarks. Comment by team member Parker. Now for the top comments. Bold. Helluva response. Love it. As a woman who has experienced this level of ashlery and insensitivity from men and women around this my whole adult life, I commend you. Sister. NTA. You sure put that dude in his place. Hope he thinks twice about saying shit like that in the future. He should be apologizing to you. Edit. Typo. Op. Please think more of the other reactions. Obviously Jerry is tar, but cousin, aunt and mum seem to have no issues with his words. Only your response. NTA. But there were more as than Jerry. Calling me crazy to say such an inappropriate thing in front of a guest I met for the first time, like asking someone he met for the first time about kids and why they can't have them. My aunt said that I took it too far. Yep, you did. Bet it felt great too. Made Jerry very uncomfortable and probably caught him off guard. You didn't talk about this out of the blue after he asked you to pass the mashed potatoes. He was entirely too invasive for meeting you for the first time and then called you barren. If things last with your cousin, is she going to enjoy being talked about like that if she can't have this man's spawn? NTA. NTA. What Jerry said was utterly cruel. What you said was shocking and was said in response to Jerry's statement. What you said wasn't even a fraction as rude as what Jerry said. Good for you for standing up for yourself when your cousin, aunt, and mother all should have, but did not. Am I the antagonist for refusing to change the family therapist we see like my wife wants? My wife and I have been married for 2 years. I'm the father of an 8-year-old son, and she is a mother of a 6-year-old daughter. My first wife passed away 2 years before I remarried. She had been sick for most of our son's life and I always knew the day would come I would lose her. I didn't try to rush into another marriage, but I found someone who helped make me happy again. And someone who knew the struggles of being a single parent. She was also good with my son and I saw her being a good mom to her daughter. My son had voiced things when my wife and I got engaged about not wanting her to replace mommy and other terms like that. I asked him why he thought that would happen, and he brought up a friend of his in school. We spoke about it. He started seeing a therapist, and he realized my getting married again was not replacing anyone. It was adding more people to our family, but that it could look like many different things. My wife was aware of all this and never voiced any concerns. After we got married, the topic of adopting each other's children came up. My stepdaughter is all for the idea and was so excited by the idea of me being her dad and my son being her brother. My son was not for it though. He said he didn't want to be adopted. My wife and I discussed things. We both had concerns, her about the impact on our family and me, that expectations would lead to a lot of drama in our lives, so we decided family therapy could be beneficial. I was proven right because the expectations we all had were different. My wife wanted to be mom to my son, and for me to be dad to her daughter. I expected to follow the kids' leads with the relationships, and was more than happy to respect what each child wanted. My stepdaughter wants a dad and a brother. My son doesn't want a new mom and wants to be able to use step and not have the family like his friend has. The therapist over the months has said we can't all get what we want, but the kids should be put first, and nothing should be rushed or forced. She suggested I could adopt my stepdaughter and my wife should just try to work on building a relationship with my son. My wife doesn't believe the therapist is working with the best interest of our family and wants to change. I worry she just wants a therapist who will say my son doesn't know what is best for him and to go ahead with the adoption. She denies this, but she doesn't say exactly what isn't working with our current therapist. So I said no. She's unhappy with this. She told her mom, who told me I should be willing to change when my wife doesn't feel like our therapist is working out. My wife said I'm invalidating her this whole process and she doesn't understand why. Am I the antagonist? Until one of them gives her what she wants to hear, he will keep wanting to switch therapists. She should behave like a mother if she wants your son to see her in that role. He won't like it if it's forced upon him. It will have the exact opposite effect of what he intended. Comment by team member Corey. Now for the top comments. NTA. Her wanting to be the mom doesn't override him wanting to keep his birth mother as mom. She can act like a mom and not need papers to justify herself. Respect both kids' needs and wants. ILOVE. My stepdad. He has taught me so much, and I consider him just as much my dad as my bio dad. They asked me once, when I was 5, if I wanted to be adopted, and I said no. They never asked again, and it didn't change a thing, and everyone was and is still just fine. This woman is being irrational. Maybe it stings a little, but WTF does it matter if the kid still loves her and everyone is fine? Sure, she might eventually find a therapist that finally agrees with her, but then that therapist would be tar too. A piece of paper that claims the mommy ultimately changes nothing to the family dynamic. Time to get over that tiny irrelevant slap to your ego, lady. NTA. Honestly, had my stepdad had the option, mom had split custody with other family members after my dad died, I probably would still said no. Still planning on asking him to walk me down the aisle though next year. He was dad's first cousin and one of his best friends, so it could go either way, but I think it's what my dad would want. NTA. Your wife needs to back the fuck off on this adoption shit with your son. He's given a valid reason why he doesn't want it. She doesn't care what he wants. She just wants it her way. The therapist isn't the problem. She wants a different one that will try to get your son to go along with her. That's such an move on her part. She can pick any therapist she wants, but I see no reason to yank the entire group of you out of therapy with someone you've already grown comfortable talking to just to appease her. She's being ridiculous. Any reasonable therapist is going to say the same thing as the first. The wife is shopping for someone who will agree with her. How many times will she ask to change till she gets the answer she wants? They should shift focus from family therapy to couples or even individual therapy for the wife to help her accept reality. If she keeps pushing, the son might reject all connections to her. NTA. Your wife is trying to invalidate your son. She needs to build a relationship, and her mom is an asshole too. NTA. She has no valid reason for wanting to change therapists. The underlying reason is because of her not getting the results and answers she wants. She wants the family therapist to give her the family she wants. If she truly feels like things aren't working, she should see the family therapist along with one individually. I think your approach of kid-oriented is the best way to go. Am I the antagonist for telling my mother-in-law this is not her baby? I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 30 male, for 2 years and we've been together for almost 10. I love my in-laws and have never had an issue with them. At least before I was pregnant with my first baby. My mother-in-law has one other daughter. Let's call her Jane, but she lives across state. She has 2 boys and is done having kids. She lives close to her mother-in-law and the boys are pretty close to her, which obviously causes some jealousy issues with my mother-in-law. My whole pregnancy was one big guilt trip about how she never got to be there for Jane for her pregnancy. She would touch my belly or get really close to it to talk to the baby. I would tell my husband that it made me uncomfortable, and while he was understanding he also felt bad for his mom too, and reminded me about how she missed many moments with Jane. During the last couple months of my pregnancy we made the decision to move in with my in-laws to save money for a house. This made my mother-in-law so happy. She kept telling everyone she was excited for the baby to come home to her. I let those comments slide for a while, but finally had to confront her after my baby shower. My parents bought us a crib and nursery decorations from our registry and my mother-in-law made a joke to my mom how good everything is going to look in my mother-in-law, room, and that she's basically going to be our live-in nanny. My mom has never had any reason to dislike my in-laws, but these comments were very off-putting. I had a sit down with my mother-in-law about boundaries and she started crying and said she just wanted to feel close to at least one of her grandchildren. I tried not bringing up the topic after that, but she didn't make it easy. The thing that gets me upset the most is the constant need to have all the baby firsts. She wants to be the first to do everything, and it's so hard to tell her no. Until one day, she waited until I left the room at dinner time. When I came back my husband excitedly told me how much the baby loves mashed potatoes, and that my mother-in-law gave her a small spoonful, and she went nuts. My mother-in-law said you weren't supposed to tell her it was grandma's little secret. I snapped. I said that's my child and there will be no secrets, no matter how small. Things got tense, and I got called dramatic, and that she's allowed to have grandma moments with my child. Whatever the fuck that means. I think my last straw is this. My husband and I have just been approved for our loan, and will be signing papers on a house soon. About 45 minutes away from my in-laws. Lately she's been going on about how it's unfair to her and how she doesn't know how to handle her baby being so far away. She's jokingly brought up suing for grandparents' rights or about setting up her new room. I wouldn't be so upset if it was 1 or 2 jokes, but after hearing about it daily, it's starting to feel less like a joke and more like she wants to take my baby. Am I the antagonist for wanting to have another sit down? She struggles greatly with boundaries. Your child is still intact, and she is attempting to copy or record moments that do not belong to her. You and your hubby need to act as one. If you don't do that right away, you'll come off as the terrible guy. Comment by team member Charlie. Now for the top comments. NTA, she has serious jealousy and boundary issues and should talk to someone to help her with it. Do not give this woman a key to your house. _THIS, and please make sure your husband doesn't give her a key either. Lol. Lol. You think her husband has a spine? He may as well had the baby with his damn mother. Secrets with granny? Taking all the firsts with granny? Steamrolling his wife to share intimate parent moments with his mother? That man is still attached to his mother. They never cut the damn umbilical cord. Woofy is going to be shafted. Mill will have a key. Shit, I suspect with months of moving and the mother-in-law needs a permanent room convo will happen. Woofy will never escape mother-in-law. And hubby allowing secrets shows he will never ever back his wife first. NTA, be clear with your husband that while you appreciate most things that your mother-in-law has done, there are specific things she has done or said that have made you uncomfortable. Give clear examples, like you have here, and say that you need him to work with you to set and maintain clear and reasonable boundaries. Together. Be clear with your mother-in-law that her role as a grandparent does not make her a co-parent. NTA. But whatever you say will go in one ear and out the other. Don't bother having a talk with your mother-in-law. Have a talk with your husband instead. You need to be very specific with your husband about your boundaries with mother-in-law. Discuss them in detail. Make sure he understands and agrees. Or find a compromise. You can even strategize about how to handle mother-in-law when, not if, she crosses these boundaries, like when she shows up unannounced and offers/demands that you two go out and let her babysit for a few hours. BTW. Make sure she does not have a key to the new house.